RESTful web service. Let's demonstrate how to use Spring Boot to create RESTful web services. We're going to still use the same models like the dish and the menus. Let's just create a web service to expose the CRUD operations on the ingredient attribute. So let's create a new module. We're going to just call it a REST API demo, and change the group, and then change the Java version to 11. Next. Okay, so if you are using 17, you can use Spring Boot 3. If you're using Java 11 or 8, just choose 2.67. Okay, and we're gonna choose Spring Web. We're gonna choose SQL database, Spring Data JPA, and that's it. So Lombok, those are the tools that is optional. So we can maybe choose Lombok for now, and create. Okay, so in order to connect to the database, we need the configuration. Okay, so code should be here, and we can just simply copy the previous code from here, and we can have those. Let's Control C and Control V. Okay, so now we are able to connect to the database, and then we need the entity classes. Okay, so just need to copy the previous entities. For now, actually, we just need the ingredient. Okay, so let's just copy all the entities there, and why we need to copy all of them is because maybe in the ingredient we're gonna have relationships. Okay, so for now we don't have, but it's just in case. And also the repository, we didn't create anything to ingredient, so that's pretty much all we need. And go back to the main method, and then we can try to start it. Give it a try, just like a dry run, to see if everything is good. So fail to load driver, okay, because I forgot to select the MySQL driver in the dependency. Okay, but it's okay, we can copy the dependencies from the previous projects to this one. Okay, so the POM XML. I'm doing this is just because I want to put all the code in the same repository, so that is easier for our training. But if you do it on yourself, just you can create a new project. Okay, so that the project won't be showing in the same folder. But it depends on your preference. If you want to do something like me, you can always create new modules. Okay, so instead of creating new projects. Okay, so after imported the driver, ran the code, and it looks like everything is working, and now we can start creating our REST API. Okay, so we're gonna focus on our ingredient. Okay, so for the ingredient, we probably need to provide the get method, so for the client to retrieve ingredient by ID, by page, like we need a list of ingredients, but we cannot return all of them, so we can return page by page. And also we need a add new ingredient, update ingredient, okay, things like that. So, and the delete ingredient, right? So CRUD operations. So we need 3 layers. We need a controller, we need service, we need DAO. Because this use case is very simple, and we're gonna just make it very, how to say that, like simplified in the service and the repository, because most of them are just one line of code. Okay, so we can just call it a controller, and then we have an ingredient controller. Okay, and then RESTful web service, we need a REST controller, and we could let everything start with ingredient. Okay, so we can just do /ingredient. Okay, the slash is optional, but put it there is, you know, easier for us to read. And then we can have a get mapping, which means that this is going to be a get request. And let's just put ID here. So this gonna be a get ingredient by ID. Okay, public, and there gonna be a return type, and then we're gonna have a get ingredient by ID method name, and then we have a path variable, which is ID. Okay, so in this case, the ID is it's an integer. Okay, so we just put the integer ID here. So what's going to be the return? Okay, so we want to return in the ingredient table. It has only 2 columns, ID and name. Okay, so it is very naturally to think that we can return the ingredient class. Okay, so which is the class that used to map to the database when we talk about JPA. So this is an entity class, but it's not a good practice, even though that model is very simple. But the better don't use the class that is used for a different purpose, because this is a class has all the field that we need, but this class is meant to map to the database. So it means that if we have a new record in the database, new rows or new columns in the database, then we need to add new fields. If I add new fields, probably those new fields are not needed for your return to the client, right? For your API. So it's in the long run, it may cause some more overhead for the maintenance. So for now, we can simply create another separate class. Let's just call it response. Okay, we can call it ingredient response. Okay, or ingredient module or something like that. So that is used for only the purpose of APIs. Okay, so we can put private integer ID and then private string name. Okay, since we have Lombok, so we can just put data annotation here. This data annotation from Lombok framework will automatically put getter, setter, and toString method to this class. Okay, so now here we can just return ingredient response. Okay, so this is the first thing. And the second is this method, we cannot customize the header and the response status code. Okay, so if you want to customize the header and response status code, then you need to put this response entity class, okay, and use it to wrap our return body, okay, like this. Okay, so this is more like a complete response representation in this class. This is the body of the response. Okay, and now all we need to do is just to return such ingredient, okay, by using our backend database communication. So here we need a repository. We need a repository of ingredient repository. Okay, so it's an interface because we're gonna use Spring Data JPA. Okay, already talked about that, and this will extends JPA repository, and the entity is ingredient. Okay, and the ID is an integer. Okay, and it's optional. We can put the repository annotation here. Repository. Okay, and it is technically doable. So if we auto wire this ingredient repository directly here. Okay, so if we inject the repository here in the controller, then we can actually call this ingredient dot find by ID, okay, and pass the ID there, and then it will return us an ingredient class. Okay, ingredient. Let's just call it ingredient. Okay, this is returning an optional. Okay, so we can wrap this, okay, using optional, because this find by is returning optional. Either you catch this using optional, or you can just call .get method. So then this ingredient will be get out. Okay. But if the ID doesn't exist, then this get method will give us error. Okay. So best way is we use optional class like this without this get, and here we can check, okay, if ingredient dot is exist, okay, or is present, okay, like this, and then we do some operations like a return the response entity dot OK, and then we put a body there. Okay, so the body should be an ingredient response, so we need to just put a response there equal to new ingredient response. Okay, we can copy all the field, set ID from the ingredient dot get ID. Okay, and also set the name. Okay, get the name. Okay, and then here we can just put the response there. All right, so then otherwise we can return what is because now if the ingredient doesn't exist, right, so it's not present there, then we can response back 404. Okay, so it's like status like not found. Okay, but here there is the factory pattern or the builder pattern. It doesn't have this 404 by default. So what we can do is we can create a new response entity. Okay, and here we can customize the HTTP status. Okay, so here it is HTTP status. Then here we can just put HTTP status. Now we can have a lot of them. Okay, we can have found, not found. Okay, so simplify, you can just type not found. Okay, so that's going to be here. Okay, so now then this whole complete API is done. So we don't have 3 layers. We have only 2 layers, which is not recommended. Okay, because it's simple, so we just leave it for now, and then let's start the project and let's test it for now. Okay, make sure the small things are working, then we add a more completed structure there. Okay, and then our Postman is open here. Okay, so if you don't have Postman, just download it, and it's a tool that you can use to test our API. Okay, so the port number is 8080, so we just do to localhost 8080 / ingredient / ingredient / ID. So let's see what kind of ID we have. 1 to 12. Okay, so let's just do 3. All right, and then send. Okay, and then we will get ID 3, name is P. Okay, so it looks like it's working. 10 send. Okay, so 10 is chicken. If we give something that doesn't exist, like 20, right? So in the database we don't have 20. Okay, and we send. Okay, now you see empty body status code is 404. Okay, so which is expected behavior from our code. Right, so if this ingredient is not presented, then we're gonna return this one. If it is there, and we're gonna return this one. Okay. So this is the very simple first one, and let's create a complete sentence, okay, or complete structure, which is we need a service. Okay, so an ingredient service should be there, and we create an interface out of it. And then we implement this interface, okay, in the service, and then we put a service annotation here, and then we inject our ingredient repository. Okay, let's just call it ingredient repository. Okay, so in the controller now, instead of directly call and we call the ingredient repository, we call ingredient service. Okay, so we call it ingredient service, and so in the ingredient service, we can give it a name, like get ingredient by ID. Okay, and for here, then it depends on you if you want to do the check. Okay, in this controller, then you can leave it everything like this and use this get ingredient return optional, or you can move this logic, right? Just like check whether the ingredient is there or not in the service. Okay, so for this one here, let's do it differently. Let's just return the ingredient, okay, from this service, and we will then leave everything here like this, and then we move this not found. Okay, and here we're gonna remove the get, So now make our controllers work a little bit easier. And then we're gonna move this check here. So let's create a method. Okay. Create a method, okay, in the service layer, and we have to implement it in the service. Okay, all right, and then here we're gonna have an optional ingredient. Okay, so this is let's just call it ingredient optional equal to ingredient repository dot find, same thing. Okay, like just now find by ID, and the ID put it here. Okay, and import. Okay, so here we need a check, right? Because the return type is ingredient, and here you have optional. So we can do this, right? So ingredient optional dot, okay, or else, okay, throw. Okay, so here is the different method that we can use in the ingredients. Like if you are there, then we're gonna return the value. If it's not there, then we can either like use or else to return something else, or we can just throw exception. Okay, so for this one, we're gonna throw exception. We're gonna throw exception called let's customize the exception. Okay, so we can just exception here called ingredient not found exception. Okay, so then this is gonna be a runtime exception. All right, and just leave it there, and then we can here throw that ingredient not found exception. Okay, because this all throw, it takes a supplier, so we can use the constructor of this method as a supplier. Okay, so in this case, if the backend can find that ingredient with this ID, then it will return. If it's not, then it will return. It will throw this exception. Okay, it will throw this exception directly to the controller, saying that this exception doesn't exist. Okay, so now let's refresh the page. Sorry, restart the application and go back to our Postman. Okay, I'll put this here so that we will see the log. Okay, and ingredient number 2 send. Okay, everything good, right? 2 water, and this is the query. And then if I do 20 send. Okay, so now we have a different error. Okay, you can see this exception happens, and it will return as an internal server error. Okay, and also here in the log, we will see that okay, it's an ingredient not found exception. Okay, and this response is not very user friendly because it just tell the user it's internal server error, but actually it's an ingredient not found. Okay, so in the backend. So here, how we can fix this, like make it more user friendly. Okay, first we can try catch the exception in the service, like in this here. We can just use try and catch block. Okay, so to catch that exception, which is okay, but not very like how say that easy or convenient, because this exception could throw in this controller everywhere, right? So we can use exception handler here. Okay, so to handle the exception, which is ingredient not found exception. Okay, dot class. We'll just put this exception here, and then we create another method. Okay, so we can just copy this here, and we can call it a handle ingredient not found exception. Okay, so we can actually put the exception here as a parameter, and then here we can just return this. Okay, as a general method. So this except handler will handle all the exceptions of this ingredient not found exception in this controller. Okay, so we can just refresh the application, restart the application, and then go back to the controller. Sorry, Postman. Okay, send. All right, now you can see the response is 404. Okay, so it means that if we cannot find it, then we can return 404. Okay, and also we can customize this one now. Okay, so instead of just return ingredient, okay, so let's just return something more user friendly. Let's see, we have an error response. Okay, we don't have this one yet. Let's create it. Okay, create a new class called error response. And in here, we can have different kind of variables like string, message. Okay, and also we can have private int status code. Okay, and maybe private string, okay, course. Okay, so this one we can use data to add a getter setters. Also, we can use a builder pattern. Okay, so it's also provided by Lombok, and also we need a no R constructor. Okay, and also we need OR constructor. So just in case if you want to use new keyword, you can use no R constructor, and the builder need OR constructor. So this is the annotation we can put to make this response can be used like this. Okay, so we're gonna have error response dot builder. Okay, so then this builder is because of this builder annotation. Okay, Lombok automatically added there, and then we can add a message. Okay, so this message could be ingredient is doesn't exist. Okay, and then we can also set status code as 400. Okay, sorry, 44. Okay, and then we can also set the cost. Okay, so the cost is ID may be too large. Okay, just some dummy ones. Okay, and then build. Okay, and then by using this, it will it's just like a one-liner, and it can create a very complicated object. Okay, so just in one line, and I think I use different. So we have to put the body first, then the status code. Okay, so just to make sure the order are correct, and then we just copy this out and then put it in the end. Okay, so here is our constructor. Okay, so this line is a little bit too long. We can use just a line breaker to break it. Then restart the application and try it again. Okay, so now you see 44, and then we have a more user-friendly message like ingredient doesn't exist. Okay, status code 44, and ID may be too large. Okay, so it's very quick. This is just a very simple get mapping with ID and the path variable to get the variable, and three-layer architecture, and then we have exception handler. Okay, so to handle the not found situation. Okay, so we'll add more APIs in the later sectors. Okay, thank you.